What's up, guys? Today, we're talking about the iPhone XS Max. It is the best iPhone that Apple has ever made, but it may not be the best iPhone for you. So the iPhone XS and its larger counterpart, the XS Max, both came out on September 21st of 2018, and it's an S upgrade. So keep in mind, that doesn't mean that it's a radical change from the last generation. That means that it's a small change with a few improvements, and in this case, the only big change is actually physically big, because they increased the size and basically just gave you a Plus model. And for those of you who like big phones like I do, that was pretty much what we were begging for when the 10 came out, because the 10, while it did have a 5.8-inch screen, which was the biggest screen on an iPhone up to that point, it still felt smaller than what I'm used to. I'm used to a fairly large phone in the hand, I think a lot of people are, and this fits that bill perfectly and uses that space to the best of its ability with a 6.5-inch display, which is actually bigger than the Galaxy S10 Plus and actually the Galaxy that it was competing with when it first launched, which was the S9 Plus. In fact, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I think it's also bigger than the Note 9, but I could be wrong on that one. Either way, it's the biggest phone that Apple's ever made. It's the one that I've been using since its launch date, and, well, how's it held up? Actually pretty good. It's held up really well, especially with that stainless steel band, considering that if it gets really bad, you can actually use like stainless steel polish to clean it. It's not impervious to damage. I do have a nick here and a cut there and that kind of stuff, but it's actually not really worse for wear in the long run. I will say my Silver 10 did actually fare a bit better because there wasn't really a coating for the color. It was just almost stainless steel, completely bare, but for the coating on this one with the Space Gray model, it did actually hold up pretty well. The glass on the back, however, does have some micro scratches on the bottom end, and the main reason for that is because when you sit it on the table, it does rock with the camera bump. It's really kind of unfortunate because that is still an issue that we face with every current iPhone. We really haven't been without a camera bump on the iPhone since the iPhone 5S, and I guess you could also count the SE. But for me, I really don't care about the camera bump too much because what it houses is absolutely worth that little bit of a bump on the back. It is still one of the best cameras you can get right now. Now, I'm expecting an ultra-wide camera on the next iPhone. This doesn't have that. This has your standard 28mm equivalent lens and your equivalent 50 to 52mm zoom lens, and it does a pretty good job. In fact, having compared this to the Google Pixel 2 and 3, and comparing it to the Galaxy S10, for the age of this camera, it holds up extraordinarily well, even when faced against newer versions of cameras that are out on the market right now. The best camera you have is the one you have on you, and the iPhone won't disappoint when it comes to photography. Though, having an ultra-wide on the Galaxy S10, that is a nice feature, and the night sight on the Google Pixel 3 is something that I really, really want to see on the iPhone X. Granted, it does take fairly good low-light pictures in certain lighting, even though there's not a lot of light there. Like this one here did a pretty good job, though, because of the noisy reduction filter or whatever they added to it. It does get a little blurry. Or this one where it's kind of picking up the street light, so it did expose kind of well. Granted, you get the commercials of Google showing off how night sight shows everything, which I am kind of jealous of. I got nothing, it's cool, and this doesn't have it. The ultra-wide, like I said, I do wish I had on this, but I'm okay with moving away from the subject when I need to take a wider picture. I've not often found myself needing a wide-angle lens, and actually even on my camera that I film with here, it's wide, but it's not ultra-wide. I've never found myself wanting the GoPro-style view off of my phone. But it'd be nice to have, I'm not going to complain. The cameras themselves, though, on this phone are both 12-megapixel cameras, both optically stabilized, and while the Google Pixel might be better for photos and the wide angle on the Galaxy might give you a bit more photography options, this is sort of the jack of all trades, master of none, and for a lot of people, that style of camera is fine. It takes some of the best video on the market right now for any phone. One of the other really nice features about this camera is that it records in stereo audio, and the front-facing camera actually now does 60 frames per second at 1080p, while the rear does 4K at 60 or 1080p at, I believe, 240. So pretty powerful, pretty awesome, but the stereo recording was actually what I had been probably most waiting for out of these phones. It takes some pretty darn good photos when the lighting is correct, and even when the lighting's not ideal, it's still really good. The more aggressive HDR really helps. It makes sure that the shadows don't go away, but it also makes sure that the highlights aren't completely blown out. Overall, it's just a well-rounded package of 2 cameras packed into the little sensor on the back, and yeah, the bump is there, but for what you get, it's not bad. I don't mind it. Wireless charging is still here, which I can say faithfully I have never once charged my phone in my house or at work through the cord. I have exclusively used wireless charging since I got this phone. The only exception to that is my car. I don't have any place to put wireless charging, so I gotta plug it in. But I also got to plug it in because I have CarPlay in my car. In my crappy little car, I have CarPlay because it's an aftermarket radio. That is the only time I actually plug my phone in. Every other time, completely wireless. And that goes for the headphones as well. The Bluetooth on this has been improved, so you do have a better Bluetooth connection. Doesn't really make much for range, though it does help with the clarity on some headphones, and it also helps with latency on a lot of headphones, including my Sony's. It's just good, and I've got nothing on that. It's great. I really haven't needed to plug anything into my phone unless I get into my car. And for those of you who are out there who are on that wireless train, good on you. If you're not, it's not for everybody. If you want a headphone jack and you want an iPhone, kind of stuck with the iPhone 6S or older. Not exactly the best idea right now. And it's also kind of good that it makes wireless charging more viable because the included charger is still the dinky little 5-watt charger that they've included on every iPhone since like day one. Like Apple, seriously, come on, like ship one of these guys. Like this is what comes with the iPad Pro now. And this is phenomenal. Like you need to ship your iPhones with these. And the fact that it's USB-C is even nicer. Just come off the dollar, ship it with this. As for the fit and finish, it's the same as the 10 in a lot of ways. Like I said, it's a bit bigger, stainless steel and glass sandwich. It's good. It looks like the iPhone 10, and by extension, because the iPhone 10 kind of set the trend, it looks like a lot of other phones that are coming out nowadays, including the notch. So let's get into how the notch has aged. So a bunch of other companies have really kind of gone in full bore with the whole notch design, and I don't mind it. In fact, because of the way that a lot of apps are designed, they kind of just push nothing up that far to the notch. They just stop there. So the only thing you get at notch level is your status on battery, Wi-Fi, and your cellular connection. And on the other side, you get the time. You know, Samsung put a dot for the camera, and that's pretty much the same thing, just kind of floating. In general, it'll just disappear after a while, and you just won't even notice it. In fact, when you are just using the phone, most of your content's going to be near the center or maybe kind of the upper third, maybe the lower third, and it doesn't ever go up to the notch, so you don't really notice it. And if you do kind of like to do that pinch to go full screen where you see the notch because it fills the whole screen, yeah, that's pretty much the time that it does it. But if you complain about it but you actively make it do that, you're kind of asking to see the notch, so it's kind of on you at that point. And the fact that the notch is surrounded by an OLED display means that, well, it pretty much just vanishes whenever the darker section of the display reaches that high because the pixels just turn off. So the black of the display and the black of the notch just blend together and it's no longer there. It's like magic. And as for that OLED display, I retain that the Samsung OLEDs are still the best on the market. I'm not going to argue that. They get brighter, they have better color options, they're just better. But this is a very, very close second. It doesn't burn in like the Google Pixels. The colors are more accurate. They're not as oversaturated, which for some people like myself, I like, especially when I'm looking at photos. I love having a more accurate display rather than a more saturated display. It doesn't quite get as bright as the Galaxies, which I kind of wish it did, but you know, beggars can't be choosers. And I'm okay with the not as bright display if the colors are a little more accurate. But like I said, I still retain the Galaxies do have better OLEDs, which makes sense considering that Samsung makes the screens that go into the iPhones and Apple calibrates those, whereas Samsung is basically doing what Apple does with hardware and software together for their calibration. So I would kind of hope they would get it down a bit better than somebody buying the displays from them. Flanking this display is a set of speakers, top and bottom. Still good, actually still better than most of the phones coming out at this point. It's loud enough that I really don't ever care if I'm listening to videos with or without my headphones because it's full enough. It's not super tinny unless you crank the volume. It's almost more of just a clarity thing. It has a little more clarity than the last year's model, but not really much more volume, I guess, is the best way to put it. Now, before I move on to performance, one minor improvement that you may not even notice and hopefully won't have to notice is that it does have a slightly better IP water resistance and dust resistance rating. It's IP68 now, as compared to IP67 on the last one. That means that you can go 1 meter deeper in water for 30 minutes with this phone. Yeah. Cool. Moving on to performance. So at the beginning of this video, I said that this is the best iPhone that they currently make, but it may not be the best iPhone for you. And what I mean by that is iOS 12. iOS 12 was not a big feature update. It was a software optimization update, which means that this is easily the smoothest iPhone I have ever owned. And I've come through pretty much every generation since the iPhone 6 came out. I went from the 5 to 5S to 6, 6S, 7. I skipped the 8 and went to the 10, and now I'm on the 10S. And this is the smoothest phone I have ever used, period. Android phones and iPhones included. However, iOS 12 also made the iPhone 10 extremely smooth, the iPhone 8 extremely smooth, the iPhone 7 extremely smooth. And that kind of defeats the purpose of upgrading to something with such massive specs. This thing has an insane level of power that iOS just barely taps into. The times that I notice that it is useful is when you're doing things like loading up a game, editing a photo, or when you take a picture with the portrait mode, which I didn't even get into when I talked about the camera. Yeah, portrait mode's fine. You can edit it. It's cool. It's pretty much still one of the better portrait mode options alongside the Google Pixel. Anyway, back to performance. Yeah, the A12 chip is insane, and yet the only time I notice it is photo editing, some light video editing, some barely even file management taps into it, and then just going through the interface, it is just butter. It is so smooth, it's insane. And I can say, hand on my heart, I can say faithfully that when I scroll through apps, unless it's loading something, I have never had it stutter on a page that is already loaded in. Never once. It's insane to me that that is how smooth this phone performs. But again, with the optimization of iOS 12, for people who like to upgrade yearly, this phone is just going to be the phone you buy because it's the newest iPhone. You're going to get it, you're up to date on the hardware, there you go. But for people who upgrade their phones when they need to, this is probably not going to be the phone you buy. In fact, this probably won't be the phone you buy, period, because it's just so darn expensive. And if you need to upgrade, you're probably going to look at something cheaper. I mean, with the way Apple's optimized their hardware and software, you could buy an iPhone 7 fairly cheap, and it's going to perform extremely well for the next few years. And if you want the new design, you could buy either a new iPhone 10, a used iPhone 10, save yourself some money, or you can get an iPhone 10R, and that thing's going to be less than this phone, same performance, different screen, bigger screen than the regular iPhone XS, but not quite as big as the XS Max. And really, apart from the one less camera and the LCD display over OLED, you're really not going to notice a big difference. So when I said that this is the best iPhone that they currently make, I mean for people like me, who are big Apple users, very tech-oriented, who want to have the latest hardware. This is the best phone they make for those kind of people because we're going to buy them anyway, we're going to use them on a daily basis, and we're going to love them. And if you're looking for the best Apple hardware out right now that is not a laptop, iPhone XS Max and the iPad Pro. Like, those are the best mobile operating system platforms that Apple makes currently. But for the general consumer, you really don't need anything this crazy. You could go with the XR and get that same insane performance, and with their optimization, it will last you just as long as any other phone would. In fact, longer if you're talking from an Android standpoint, because these iPhones will get, at the most, 7 years of software support, usually about 6. And you really can't say that about any other Android phone on the market right now. And even then, if you're looking at an Android phone, there are a lot of cheaper options out there for those who are even techie people. The Pocophone, Galaxy S10e, or the A series from Samsung. And of course, Google just launched their Pixel 3a for whatever that's worth. So at the end of the day, considering this iPhone is coming up on its first birthday, where it will be replaced by the next generation, whatever that happens to be, this phone is still absolutely worth buying for the very, very tech-enthused buyer. But for most other people, you could probably pass this phone up and go with something less expensive. and at the end of the day, you're really not much worse off for wear. So for those of you out there who think that you want to buy the newest and latest and greatest, go for it. This is the perfect phone for you. But for those of you who are looking for a little more of a cost-effective purchase, look around a bit. If you're really looking at an iPhone, you can still get fairly inexpensive iOS devices and not have to drop $1,000 to get the latest and greatest tech. Anyway, guys, that's been it. What do you guys think? Did you guys like the review? This was actually the one that won my poll that I put up. So I put up a poll asking what you guys wanted to see me review, and we don't have a lot of retro tech fans in the audience apparently, but we do have a lot of iPhone fans, or at least people who wanted to see me talk about it. So I've got kind of an idea now with that poll of what's going to be the next few reviews, and keep an eye out because there will be more polls coming pretty soon actually to pick what will be the next set of reviews you guys get. So make sure to check that out. Make sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment letting me know what you guys think, and apart from that, I'll see you in the next video. Make sure to be there, and have a good one.